He's Jim Wyatt, senior writer and editor for TennesseeTitans.com, been covering the team since 1999, so he was there for the entirety of Mike Vrabel's tenure as a head coach of the Titans. Jim, appreciate you taking the time. How are we doing today, my man?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me.
Excited to talk Mike Vrabel with you during his tenure as a Titans head coach because, of course, all Patriots fans are saying, well, we know Mike Vrabel from 2001 to 2008, three-time Super Bowl champion, former player, came back, got his red jacket. But as a head coach of the Titans, and you saw him from the first time he's ever been in that role to his final season 6 years later, what are Patriots fans getting in Mike Vrabel now?
Well, I mean, they're getting a tough, hard-nosed football coach who puts everything that he has into it. And you mentioned my time covering the Titans. I've covered, went from Jeff Fisher to Mike Munchak to Ken Wisenhunt to Mike Mularkey to Mike Vrabel, now to Brian Callahan. I think Mike Vrabel is very unique in just how he goes about the job and how hands-on he is as a coach. He's not going to sugarcoat things with media. He's not going to sugarcoat things with players. He's not going to sugarcoat things with his own coaches or officials who might be working a practice during the week, because he tells it like it is. But he does that because it means so much to him. He wants to hold everybody to the same standard. And when you've got the past that Mike Vrabel has, and that includes a guy who worked his way up in the league to becoming, a great player on a dynasty team, then you can hold some other guys accountable for that, because you've proven that you've put the work in. So I have no question that Mike Vrabel's going to pour everything he has into this job, and I expect the Patriots to bounce back from where they are right now.
Jim, can you fill in the blanks for us who don't understand or know the deets of what happened towards the end of Vrabel there in Tennessee? Because all of us know the A.J. Brown thing was weird at the end, and then there were rumors that Vrabel was bumping heads with some people in the front office. Can you sort of just give us the overview of what happened? I know, obviously, he was losing games. That helps, right? But I think he only struggled for a couple seasons there, and then they ran him out of town. What were sort of the behind the scenes? What was going on at the end of Vrabel's tenure there in Tennessee?
Well, I think, the main thing is they lost 18 of 24 games at the end. And when you lose, just like what happened at the general manager position here just a week ago when Rand Carthon lost his job, when you lose a lot of games, it makes it tougher for you to stay on. And, I don't know what I necessarily want to get into the he said, she said about what happened with people in the building. Certainly, obviously things got sideways, and it felt like it was a point of no return. I think Mike Vrabel, when he first got the job, it was certainly things were different. He was working alongside John Robinson. He had a good roster. When he was hired, they want to go from good to great, and I think Mike Vrabel took them to an AFC championship game. He took them to a point where they were the number one seed in the AFC one year. They fell short of getting to great. Patriots fans know what it's like to be great because they've got a bunch of rings and banners hanging in that stadium. Titans never got to be great with Mike Vrabel, and at the end, they lost 7 straight games to close out the 2003 season. I take that back, to close out the 2022 season, and then they went 6-11 in 2023, and when you got some things inside the building that maybe aren't going great, then you've got tough decisions that are made.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, how it started for him, how he was learning, and then what it was 6 seasons later. How did you see Mike Vrabel evolve over the 6 seasons of him becoming a head coach and then learning how to become a head coach in Tennessee?
Well, he was, it's funny. I've been around some first-year head coaches, and I think the first year on the job, it really is a learning experience. That's the way it was with Brian Callahan this past year here. It was the way it was with Mike Munchak when he took over for Jeff Fisher way back in the day. Vrabel was different because it just seemed like he was fit for the job when he got here because he was described as a leader of men, and that's the reason they hired him, because he was so good at rallying guys to want to fight for one another. He was so good at getting everybody to buy in. in a lot of ways with Mike Vrabel, it's his way or the highway. But people respected him because, again, they knew he put the work in. I don't necessarily think he's somebody that had to learn on the job. Again, I think he knew he had a plan when he got here, and I think he started to implement that from the very beginning. Now, I think he knew he probably had to adjust some things, how he treated players, how he handled practices, how hard he was on guys, how he called out guys. Maybe he toned some of that back here as maybe some of the guys bristled. And when he left, I have to tell you, there were some people that came out of the woodwork that were willing to step up, not all of them on the record, but willing to step up and say, man, that guy's a hard ass. It wasn't he fun to play for him. He wouldn't let us do this. He wouldn't let us do that. But I think also there was also a big group of people who appreciated how he was and knew why he did things the way he did it. And I know in New England it's going to be, guys there are used to playing for a hardcore coach. It was just a couple of years ago when you had Bill Belichick there. Mm-hmm. So it's not much of a departure from that to what you're getting now. But he's going to do things his way. And I think now that he has 6 years under his belt as a head coach and knows what went right, what went wrong, he'll be even better because of it.
Yeah, he mentioned when he was asked, what did you learn your first time as a head coach? And he said it's all about relationships with players.
That's right.
And it's interesting you point out how people said he wouldn't let us do this, he wouldn't let us do that. During his introductory presser, Jimmy said there's not going to be a lot of rules to start. Be on time, be respectful, be able to communicate. And Mike Vrabel said if someone's late, he wants to know why, because he wants to give the resources to the players to help them. You know what? If they need a half hour, they're dealing with something, he'd rather them deal with it that first half hour in the building than it be on top of them the entire time they're at practice and workouts and treatment the entire day. That shows me the growth. We hear with Mike Vrabel, the accountability. We hear with him how he can be, have a strong self-belief, and people may not take that the right way.
Right.
But when it comes to accountability with him, that's something that lacked this past season for the Patriots, Jim. What does accountability with Mike Vrabel look like?
Well, part of it is, showing up on time. Part of it is not taking plays off. Part of it is putting the work in during the offseason to prevent, getting, soft tissue injuries when you show up for camp. I mean, he didn't hesitate sometimes calling guys out who were repeat offenders in that category because I think he felt like they could do things to prevent certain things from happening. So accountability with Mike Vrabel is just, doing it the way you should, doing the job the way what you're getting paid to do. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy your family. That doesn't mean you can't have a little downtime yourself. But it means you better be willing to work it, and you got to be willing to have the back of the guy you've got a locker right next to. I know Mike Vrabel never wanted the coaches to get a lot of credit. He always says it's a players' league. Players are the ones who make plays. Players are the ones who show up on Sunday, and that's true. But you certainly got to get them in a position to do that. And he's good about holding guys accountable. He's good at motivating players. But more than anything, he's good about just having guys prepared. And that's calling on. That's having in team. He's legendary for having team settings and classroom settings where he'll call a guy out. And he'll, if you don't get the right answer, and I'm not talking about calling a guy out, because he maybe did some of that too, calling a guy out if he didn't like what he saw on tape. But I'm talking about calling a guy's name in a meeting, forcing him to answer a question in front of the whole team,
right?
And showing that you have done your homework. And on the practice field, I mean, I've never seen a coach like him who will put on some padding and will line up across from an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman and teach him techniques to the point where he'll busted a gap on the bridge of his nose one time, was bleeding down his face one time in a practice because I think he took maybe either a shoulder pad or a helmet or something like that. But he'll get in and show you how he wants it done.
If you're enjoying the conversation, be sure to tune in Monday through Friday to Boston Has Entered the Chat. We talk about all the latest news in sports and culture all around Boston and the nation. Available every day of the week. You can find us on YouTube, Twitch, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever else you get your podcasts.
Yeah, I remember seeing him even pregame, like before a Sunday game, an NFL Sunday game. This guy's working out with the team, working himself up to a sweat. It was incredible to see that. I want to ask you this, especially,
and he did that for a while too, and he quit doing it because he didn't like the attention he got for doing it. Like he used to run sprints and used to do push-ups and used to do the kettlebell and people started filming some of that stuff and saying, "Man, look at this guy! He looks like he can still play in the league."
Right.
But once people started giving him attention and making it about him, he quit doing it. And that's just kind of how he is. He doesn't want the attention to go to him.
It's signs of a leader. And I'll tell you this, I know it's such a joyous occasion here for Patriots fans, and it sounds like you love the move as well, Vrabel, to the Patriots. You understand it. But I want to flip the coin here and look at the flip side of it. If I have some concerns, Jim, it's that Vrabel's team there, when he had success, was a veteran team. You had an absolute animal monster in Derrick Henry, and then you had Ryan Tannehill, who's a veteran quarterback who's been around, the league. So I look at this New England situation, it's the complete opposite. First of all, you damn sure don't have a Derrick Henry. And then secondly, this is a young, rebuilding team. We think Drake May is good, but he's a rookie quarterback. So I have some concerns about how does Vrabel resonate with the younger talent in this league. And also, this is a rebuild. He's not coming into a situation with a veteran team who just needs a Mike Vrabel to get him over the hump. That hump is way bigger here, my friend. Am I being fair, Jim, by being concerned by that?
Yeah, I think that's fair because, again, when he got the job, he was replacing Mike Mularkey, a team that had just made the playoffs and won 9 games a year before. I think that 2017 Mularkey team lost in the playoffs to the Patriots. And then he lost his job a couple of days later and replaced by Mike Vrabel because they wanted to go, again, from good to great. And they did some really good things during that stretch with the guys that you mentioned. Ryan Tannehill is his quarterback, and Derrick Henry is his running back, and A.J. Brown is his receiver. And they had Taylor Lewan, they had Ben Jones, and they had some Jurrell Casey. They had a bunch of guys who were Pro Bowlers and All Pros. Kevin Byard's another one. And then toward the end of his tenure, lost some of those guys. The thing that Mike, caught a lot of flack for, and I don't know how much it's on the coach, but a lot of his teams were beat up at the end of seasons. And some people wondered if it was because they just worked them too hard. I will say he made the most out of a lot of those teams. You're talking about the youth that he's going to be working with and kind of a little bit of a rebuild. I think he did some of his best work when he had a roster that was depleted because of injuries, and he had guys step in from the practice squad and be ready for the game. I think he referenced today a season where they played 91 players, the most ever played in an NFL season, and they still had some success during those times. But I do think part of the reason he was able to get guys to buy in is because of the locker room culture he created and because of the veteran groups and some of the guys that would speak up and spread his message throughout the locker room. He's better identify some players there who are willing to do that for him, who will have his back, who will spread his word, who will get people to jump on board and believe in him instead of having people getting turned off because he yelled at them in a team meeting or yelled at them at practice or called them out because they weren't, because they got exposed on a Sunday.
When we hear about, a lot of talk about him is that what it was working with the different front offices. You mentioned there was a John Robinson, there's a Ryan Cowden. I'll ask you about him in a moment. And there's Rand Carthen at the end. When Mike Vrabel spoke at his introductory presser, he mentioned Elliot Wolf, who currently leads the personnel department, 3 of his first 4 answers. He sounded collaborative. He sounded like he was open-minded to communication, figuring things out, establishing the culture, all the leadership, right? How is Mike Vrabel in that collaboration? How did you see him in the Titans? Was it at first he was saying, hey, it's my way, this is how we're doing it? Or did he grow over the years with the Titans? And you see it that it's more than him just saying it, but that's actually some action he'll put into it as the head coach of the Patriots, Jim.
Well, I think there was no question when he got here and John Robinson was the GM, that John Robinson was the guy that was calling the shots. And if you don't believe that, look at Vrabel's reaction when A.J. Brown got traded on draft night. Vrabel had to get up out of his seat and kind of take a little walk because he was frustrated. I don't think Mike Vrabel would have made that trade, and I think there were certainly some other factors that went into that. But John Robinson was the one making the decisions when Mike Vrabel first got here. Certainly he took into account what his head coach was saying. He tried to find the type players that he wanted. When John Robinson left, it was different. There was a different structure with and a different dynamic when Mike Vrabel was here, Ron Cowden was here, and Rand Carthon came in. I mean, all those guys had to work together, and I think Mike Vrabel tried to maybe assert himself a little bit more. Ultimately, that didn't work out, and I think Mike Vrabel knows the situation he's getting into now, where then it just kind of developed that way, and he was kind of forced to try to make it work. He knows what he's getting into, and certainly I watched a good chunk of his press conference today, and sounds like a guy who, again, has been in this job before and learned some things, also learn things to do, learn things not to do, and I think he's willing to do whatever he can to make it work for himself and everybody around him.
And I want to end with this, Jim. I was reading your mailbag from last season after Vrabel was let go, and one fan emailed you and said, I've rooted for the Titans for the last time. I will root against them with more fervor than I rooted against Tom Brady and the Patriots. And that's a lot. I will root for whatever team Mike Vrabel ends up coaching for, even if it is the Patriots.
Wow.
So shout out to that fan forecast in the future. I think Vrabel should have been the hire a year ago. But my question to that is, there are fans that are saying, and I hope they still are rooting for the Titans, but they're willing to pick the most hated franchise in the history of sports over their own team because they love Mike Vrabel so much. What about him endears him to the fan base with that much, just strength and that much passion from the fans for their head coach?
Well, I can't say everybody was like that. I do those mailbags; those things get pretty ugly. And believe me, there are a lot of people here who cheer for the Ravens because of Derrick Henry. I think people here in Nashville, they've kind of embraced their stars and will support them. When at the end of Mike Vrabel's tenure, there were a lot of people writing into me who were done with him and saying they needed to make a change. And now that the Titans finished the season at 3-14, picking first overall, I'm hearing from people who are saying, "Oh, you never should have fired Vrabel, should have kept him." So that's the way these things go. Some people were glad to see him go. Some people hated to see him go. It just kind of evolves depending on how success goes. I will say that I think most people in Nashville, if you are around the team or in the city or certainly have gotten to know Mike Vrabel at all, you can understand why a person in the community would like him, because Mike Vrabel is certainly, you can say a lot of things about him, and certainly, again, he can be tough to deal with. He will make it life uncomfortable for media covering the team. He will make life uncomfortable for a lot of the players who play for him. He'll challenge people all in that organization. But I think everybody, realized just being around him and watching him behind the scenes knows he's a good guy. Like he would give a lot of his time, a lot of his money, make a lot of sacrifices behind the scenes and always treated people well. His kids, one of the sons went to Father Ryan High School, which is where my kids went to school. It's where I went to school. So I'm always seeing people in my alma mater saying, "Oh, Vrabel was here the other day. What a great guy he is." And he stood and talked to me for 15 minutes. And there's some other places around town where I'd hear those same stories. So Mike Vrabel's a good guy. There's no question about it. I enjoyed his wife, Jen, getting some recognition, getting the flowers at the start of that press conference, got to know his sons a little bit. I feel like people in that community who didn't get to know him during his playing days will see how he operates behind the scenes, and I think that's why people like him. Now, ultimately, he'll be judged by wins and losses, and if he's able to restore what they have been able to do in Foxborough for over the last couple of decades, people are going to love him. If he can't get that done with the team, he's going to have to rebuild, and then they'll be ready to run him out of town too. I mean, that's just the way this business works. I mean, you got to win, and so I've been around a lot of nice guys and seen a lot of nice guys, but if you don't produce, then they're going to be looking for your replacement.
Yep. Hey, I'll tell you, his second impression with the fan base, first as a head coach, there was humility. There was a lot of reflection from him.
Yep.
And for the guy that was the top head coaching candidate out there on the market for any team to hire, you would never think it. He sounds like he was grateful, and he was even happy. He said so himself. He's happy he never coached here before because he was happy that he went to Ohio State, to Houston, to Tennessee to learn how to be a head coach before getting back to New England. Jim Wyatt of TennesseeTitans.com, senior writer and editor. Appreciate you taking the time, giving us a perspective and all these stories about Mike Vrabel. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, appreciate you having me.